Dear learner, welcome in my lecture of programming in Java. So today we will discuss about Java constructor, copy constructor and recursive class. I am Dr. Ashutosh Kumar Bhatt, Associate Professor, School of Computer Science and IT, Uttarakhand, Open University, Haldwani. So in my previous lecture we have discussed about methods, passing argument to method and returning values from the method, and the objective of today's lecture is creating and calling constructor, different ways to initialize the object, reference variable, by method and by constructor, and types of constructor in Java, inner class and copy constructor. So we will complete all these topics in this lecture. So first of all, constructor. In Java, a constructor is a block of code similar to the method. It is called when instance of the class is created. So you can see the example of this constructor. So here salary is a class, and you can see inside the salary class we have constructor salary. So you can see the name of constructor is always same as the name of class. So here the salary is a constructor, and inside this salary constructor we have mentioned all the variable which we are initializing. So again see the second point, at a time of calling constructor, memory for the object is allocated in the memory, and it is a special type of method which is used to initialize the object. So again you can see the example. So here we are initializing the variable of the particular class. So here salary class is mentioned. So inside salary class we have basic, DA, HRA, GS means gross salary, NS means net salary, and tax. These are the different variable of this salary class. So we are initializing all the variable inside the constructor. So the basic purpose of constructor to initialize the variable of a class. So this is the first thing which is related to the constructor. Now see some rules, some different rules of creating Java constructor. So these rules are: constructor name must be same as its class name. So again see the program, the name of class is salary and the name of constructor is also salary. And second point, constructor must have no explicit return type. So the constructor, always constructor we can pass the argument to the constructor, but it will not return any value. See in this case of this salary constructor, so we have not mentioned here return statement. So we will not use, always we will not use any return type in the constructor, but in case of function we can return value. See the another function, that is calculate net, the bottom part of this slide. So its return type is float. So the calculate net is a normal function, so where we can return any value, and we have mentioned here return NS. So this is the function and where we can return any value, but in case of constructor, as salary is mentioned here, so in case of this salary constructor we have not mentioned any return type. So always you must not write here the return statement. So now the third point, a Java constructor cannot be abstract, static, final or synchronized. So we will not mention abstract in front of the constructor, as well as static we cannot write here, and final is not mentioned, and synchronize also not mentioned before the constructor. We will write just name of the constructor, but we can pass argument. So this is the rule regarding the constructor. So here salary is a constructor, and inside the salary constructor we are initializing all the variable, and calculate net is a function where we are finding the sum of basic, HRA and DA. So the sum of all these basic, HRA and DA is gross salary, and then we are finding here net salary. Net salary equals to GS minus tax, means gross salary minus tax. So finally we will return net salary. So these are the function as well as constructor, and we will execute these this constructor as well as function in next class. So the next class is XXY. So this is the class, another class where we have mentioned public static void main string args, and inside this main function, we first of all we have defined a variable net variable. So float net, and then we have defined the object of salary class, salary as equals to new salary, and then we are writing here s dot calculate net. So s means s is a object of salary class, and while we are writing here salary s equals to new salary, as we are writing new salary, so this new salary will execute this salary constructor. So you have to remember this thing when we will write new salary. So this new salary will execute the constructor salary. So so see the another line, s dot calculate net. So s is object of salary class. So s dot calculate net. So s is a object and function name we are writing here, function name. So this is the difference between constructor as well as normal function. In case of normal function, we will execute the normal function by writing its object name s dot calculate name, and while we are when we will execute the constructor, then we will write new salary. So new salary will directly by default will execute this salary constructor, and calculate net is a function. So this is executed by s dot calculate net, and when this calculate net will execute, it will return ns. So this ns will be transferred to the variable net. So net is a float type, and the return type of the calculate net is also float. So this float value will be transferred to the net variable, and finally in the last line, system.out.println net salary equals to, we are printing the value of net variable. So this is the program where we have mentioned the constructor. Now see the ways how to initialize the object. So to initialize the object, we have three different methods. First method is reference variable. Through reference variable we can initialize, by method we can initialize, and by constructor we can initialize. So by constructor you can see here. So in this method we are initializing the values of a class, variable of a class, we are initializing by using the constructor. So this third method, we already know this third method, and now see the by reference variable. So how to initialize the object by reference variable. So this is a program. By using this program we can understand how to initialize the variable of a class by using the reference variable. So object and class example this is. So you can see here student class, and inside the student class we have name variable, string name, and then you can see here the another class test student. So this is the second class. First class is the student, and inside the student class we have only single variable, that is name variable, and the another class, that is test student, where we have mentioned public static void main string args. So inside this main we have mentioned here s1 object of student class. So as we will write here s1 equals to new student, so it will execute default constructor. So we have not mentioned any constructor here, but it will execute automatically the default constructor. So the second line of inside the main, that is s1 dot name equals to Sumit. So directly we are initializing the previous class variable by the second class. So s1 dot name, s1 is the object of student class, previous class is a student class, and its object is s1. So by using the object of the previous class, we can initialize the variable of the previous class, s1 dot name equals to Sumit. So directly we can assign the value to the name variable. So this is the initialization through a reference. So this is the first method. So finally we are writing here system.out.println student name s1 dot name. So this is the first type, reference, by reference, in ways to initialize the object, that is by reference variable. Now see the another method, that is by method, second method, by method. So how we will initialize the object by method. So you can see this example. So in this example we have class student, and we have two variables inside this student class, roll number and name are two variables. So we are initializing these two variables by initialize record function. So you can see the first function, that is initialize record, where we are passing two arguments, integer r and string n. So we are passing two arguments here, and this r will be transferred to roll number and n will be transferred to the name. and finally void display info. So here we are printing system.out.println roll number and name. The output will be displayed roll number and plus then space, one single space, then name. So these two value will be printed. You can see here the output 111 is the roll number and Karan is the name. So now see, this is the first class student class and the second class test student class, and inside the test student class we have mentioned here public static void main string args, and here in the first line we have defined the object of the previous class student class, student S1 equals to new student. So by this S1 object we are writing here S1 dot initialize record function. So we are running this initialize record function by S1 object, and we are passing two argument 111 and Karan. So this 111 will be transferred to the R variable and Karan will be transferred to the N variable, and finally when this initialize record will execute, it will transfer the value of R to roll number and N to name, and the last line of this public static void main, that is S1 dot display info. So it will execute the method of student class, that is display info class. So this will display the roll number and name, and you can see the output same in the same slide. So this is the initialization through method, and the third way to initialize, that is by constructor. So we have already I have already explained you this to initialize by constructor. So again see this program, here we have constructor, and in constructor we are initializing all the variable, and the another variable, another function, that is calculate net, that is normal function, and we are executing this by this second class x axis y, where we have public static void main, and then we have defined float net variable. So because when calculate net will execute, that it will return any value, and this value will be transferred to the net variable, and we have defined here salary s equals to salary, means s is object of the salary class, and by this s object we are executing this calculate net function, and then it is transferring the value of returning the value, and after calculating the net salary, and this net salary will be transferred to the net variable, and finally we are printing system.out.println through this statement. We are printing the net salary, we are giving the output of net salary. So these are three methods. Now see some other rules regarding the constructor. Every time an object is created using the new keyword, at least one constructor is called. When we will have to execute the constructor, then we have this new statement, new keyword. So see here salary s equals to new salary, as we will mention here new salary, as the compiler will execute this new salary, then it will execute directly the constructor, salary constructor. So which is like this salary constructor. So this is regarding this slide. Now there are some more rules regarding the constructor of Java. So we can use as access modifier while declaring a constructor. In other words, we can have private, protected, public, default constructor in Java. So we can mention here private constructor. We can use these specifier with the constructor, private, protected, public and default, but we cannot return any value through constructor. We can use these modifiers, these words with the constructor, but we cannot use these. We cannot write the return type with the constructor. So these are the rules. There are two types of constructor in Java. One is default constructor and second is parameterized constructor. So these are two different type of the Java constructor, default constructor as well as parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor, where we will pass the argument to the constructor, while in case of the default constructor, we never pass any argument, no argument passed to the constructor. So this is the syntax of this default constructor when it doesn't have any parameter. So you can see here class name, then simple bracket, and inside the curly bracket we will write the statements. So this is constructor. So constructor name is the name of class. The default constructor is used to provide the default value to the object like 0 or null. So in case of default constructor, automatically it is the variable are initialized by the 0 as well as null value depending on the type. 0 in case of the integer numeric value, and in case of the numbers, and null in case of the string. So you can see this example where bike is a class, and inside the bike1 class we have bike1 constructor, and as this constructor will execute, it will display the message bike is created. So the main is also here, public static void main string args. So as we will define the object of bike1 class, bike1 b equals to new bike. So as this new arrived, as this new occurred, so it will directly execute the bike1 constructor, and bike1 constructor will display bike is created message. So if there is no constructor in a class, in this case we have the constructor bike1, but when we are not defining any constructor in class, the compiler automatically creates the default constructor. So in that case, that is default constructor is used. So you see this example where we have this default constructor, this concept of default constructor. So see the student3 class student3, and integer id is the variable, string name is also another variable, and then display function, where inside this display function we have mentioned system.out.println, where we are printing these id and name. So the variable which is defined here inside the same class, id and name. So we are printing id, then one space, after plus you can see here single space, plus name. So we have two variable id and name. So we are printing by this line. So now see the public static void main, where we are defining the object of student3. There are two objects, s1 and s2. s1 equals to new student3, and s3 student3, s2 equals to new student3. So we have two different objects, s1 and s2 of student3 class. So now see s1 dot display, when we will execute this display function of for the s1 object, so it will execute the display function of the same class, and where inside the same class we have display function where we are printing id and name, but we are not initializing id and name anywhere in the class. In this student3 class we are not initializing the value of this id and name. So how it will display the value of this two id and name variable? So as I said already, if there is no constructor in a class, see the bottom line, if there is no constructor in a class, compiler automatically creates default constructor. So automatically it creates automatically default constructor, and automatically the value of id and name is initialized 0 and null value. Name is a string type, so null value will be transferred to the whenever we will print this value of name, so it will display, it will return null. And in case of id is integer type, so whenever we will print the value of id, so it will display null. So if in the above class we are not creating any constructor, so compiler provides for a default constructor. So in this case compiler automatically execute the default constructor. Here 0 and null values are provided by the default constructor. So 0 will be returned in case of id, and null will be returned in case of name. So these are two values which are returning. So in case of s1 dot display as well as in case of s2 dot display, the same value will be returned, because we are not initializing the value of id and name, because we are not using any constructor. So by default it will display whenever we will print these id and name, so it will display the default value, that is 0 and null. And Java have also used parameterized constructor which has a specific number of parameter is called parameterized constructor. So these are two types. So already I have told you there are two different types, default constructor as well as parameterized constructor. So now we are I am describing parameterized constructor. So parameterized constructor, where we will pass any parameter to the constructor. So here student class, and inside the student class we have id and name are two variable. In the previous one we are not initializing any value, we don't have any constructor, but see the same program is here. In this case we have constructor, we have student, this is 4 is misprinted here, so it is student, not student 4. So student, integer I and string n. So I and n are two argument are passed to this student constructor, and as this value I and n, I will be transferred to the id and n will be transferred to the n parameter will be transferred to the name. So these two arguments are transferred to the name id and name variable. And now see the display function, void display. Here system.out.println, we are printing that id and name, id and then single space then name. See the previous example where we are printing, as we are printing id and name, so it is printing 0 and null, but in this case when we are using parameter, then it is displaying 111 and current, these two value, and in the second case it is 222 and rn. So this is accordingly they are printing these values, because we are initializing, same time we are initializing by the constructor. So public static void main, inside this main you can see here S1 and S2 are two objects. S1 is a object of first this student class, S2 also the object of student class, but the two different time we are passing two different argument. In first round we are passing 111 and current, and in the second time we are passing 222 and rn. So as we will display S1 dot display function, so accordingly it will display the first passed argument 111 and current, and in case of this S2 dot display, so the object accordingly the second object S2 is initialized by 222 and rn, so accordingly it will display the same value 222 and rn. So you can execute this and you will got these output. So you must have to implement these problems and these programs. So now the basic difference between, finally we can say the difference between Java constructor and Java method. A constructor must not have return type. So you must have to remember this line, constructor never return any value, so must not have any, it must not have any return type. While in case of the method, a method must have to return value. In case of method we can return, sometime we can return value or sometime we write void, but we must have to write the void also, because if we are not returning any value then we will write void in case of method. So method always return any value, must have return. So this line you have to remember, must have a return time. The constructor is invoked implicitly, means automatically they are invoked as we define the object of any class, or we write the new then class name, new operator, as new operator is occurred, new keyword is occurred, so automatically implicitly it will create the constructor. And while in case of the method it is invoked explicitly, so we have to mention explicitly, we have to mention object name and function name. So this is the basic difference between constructor and method. And see the another program where, so this is some tricky program calling the parameterized constructor from default constructor. So here we are using default constructor as well as parameterized constructor, both are we mixing here both parameterized as well as the normal parameterized constructor as well as default constructor. See the bottom side, bottom part of this slide, you can see here class test this 6. So this is the name of class, and inside this test this 6 class we have public static void main string args, and here we are mentioned we have mentioned here a is the name of class and small a is the object of the class equals to new a. So as this line will execute, new a will automatically execute the constructor of the previous a class. So see the a constructor, inside the class a we have the constructor. First in the first line you can see the constructor, and because the name of class and name of function are same. So how can we guess that the A is a function? Because after A there are two simple bracket. So these simple bracket, these symbol express that this is the function. So inside this constructor, the first constructor, you can see this 5, this 5. So this 5 means this is this keyword is used to execute the constructor inside the constructor. So inside the same class we cannot write here a again. So we have mentioned here this means the constructor of the same class, but parameterized constructor, because 5 is transferred here. So 5 is mentioned here. So this 5 will be transferred to the integer x. So this A will execute A integer x. So parameterized constructor it will execute. So here the 5 will be transferred to the x, and inside this second constructor, parameterized constructor, system.out.println x. So it is printing the value of x, and you can see the output. Same time you can see the output, because we are printing hello A by the second line, and in the first line this 5 means first of all this 5, this parameterized constructor will execute and it will display the value of x, which is 5. So for in the first line it will display 5, and in second line it will display hello A. So this is the parameterized constructor from default constructor. Now inner class, the another topic of this lecture, that is inner class. So inner class, when we define a class inside a class, then it is called inner class. So a class declared inside another class or interface in Java is called Java inner class. So sometime it is called nested class. So see the example here, class Java outer class, and inside this Java outer class we have class Java inner class. So class inside the class. So this is the example of inner class. So this is very interesting that in Java we can mention class inside any class. And logically a group of classes and interfaces in one places. So these are the benefit of this inner class, and all members of outer class can be accessed by the inner class, including the private data member and method. So see this last statement, this last point, all the member of the outer class can be accessed. All the member of outer class can be accessed by an inner class. So inner class can access all the member of outer class because they are inside the boundary of this outer class. So including private data member and methods. So so see the another example where we have this test member outer. So this is the name of class, test member outer is the outer class name, and inside this test member outer class we have this num variable, private integer num 16. So this is the private variable. So this private variable can be used inside the inner class. So you can see here class inner, and here inside the inner class we have two function and one main method. So first function is the number and second function is the display. And see the public static void main string args. So it will execute from the void main. So inside void main, first of all we have defined the object of test member outer. So this is outer class object obj equals to new test member outer. So obj is object of the outer class member, and as we will execute the display function, so we will write obj.display. So you can see here display void display function, it will execute the display function, and inside the display function you can see here we first of all we have defined the object of inner class. In is object of inner, in equals to new inner, and in dot number we are writing here in dot number. So the number is the first function. So as this line will execute, it will execute the number function, and inside the number function we are printing the number is the value of number. So accordingly it will display the output. So 16 is output. So you can see here 16 is a number. This is the private variable, private variable which is defined inside the outer class. So we are printing this, we can use this inside the inner class. So number function of inner class. So accordingly it will display the value 16. So you can see it, and I have demonstrated, as well as you can implement this when you will execute it on your computer. So now see the simple example of recursion. So recursion is also part of this lecture. Recursion, you know recursion in C language. So the same thing is repeated here. Recursion, the concept of the recursion is same as in C language or in Java programming language. So here we have a class, that is factorial class, and inside the factorial class we are writing here the fact function, and which is where we are using the recursion. So inside the fact function we have a variable, we have a argument, that is integer n. So n is a argument which is passed to the fact function. Now see the another variable, that is result variable, which is the part of this fact function, and we have mentioned a condition if number equals to 1, as the argument n is a argument, and we are comparing this n with 1. If n is a 1, then it will return value 1, because further we will not pass this value. But in case in another case, result equals to fact n minus 1 into n. So suppose n is 5, so first time the value is n minus 1 means 4 into n is 5. So 4 into 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, this way up to 1 we are execute this loop, and it will find the factorial of the particular number. Suppose number is 5, then the factorial of number is 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So every time when it will execute n equals to n minus 1, so fact n minus 1, every time it will be it will pass the argument n minus 1. First time it is 5, second time it is fact 4, then fact 3, fact 2, and finally fact 1. And when it is 1, fact 1, then it will compare the value of n with 1, and it will return 1. So this is the example. So see the another class, that is recursion class, and here public static void main string args. So we have mentioned here factorial f equals to new factorial, and by writing this factorial this line factorial f equals to new factorial, so this new factorial will automatically execute the constructor of the previous class, but in this case there is no constructor. So see the last line system.out.println factorial of 4 equals to f dot fact 4. So this is fact is a normal function, f dot fact 4. So this 4 will be transferred to the n. So again this due to this recursion, so 4 minus 1, then 3. So 3 will be transferred here, and same way it will execute recursively one by one. So this is the example of recursion. Now you can see the output 3 into 4, 4 into 3 into 2 into 1 equals to 24. So, and output of the program factorial of 4 is 24. Now the copy constructor, this is also a part of constructor. Copy constructor is also very important part of this lecture. So copy constructor are the special type of constructor in Java that we use to create a duplicate of existing object. So copy constructor means we make a clone of that a particular constructor. So this is copy constructor. So you can understand this copy constructor by the example. So you can see this example where we are using a copy constructor. So see the class complex, and inside the complex class we have two double variable re and im, private double re and im. So these two variables are there. So public complex double re comma im. So complex is a class, and we have mentioned here complex constructor, and we are passing two argument re and im. And these two argument will be transferred to the same variable of same complex class. So when we have the same variable as the variable of argument, then we will write here, this dot re equals to re, because we have same variable in argument and same variable inside the class. So we have to differentiate it by this keyword. So this dot re means the re variable of this class, re variable of complex class. So we will write here this dot re equals to re. So this the re is a simply re is a argument, and this dot re is a re variable of the class, the same class, and this dot im equals to im. So this way we will initialize the value of the class. Now see the another complex constructor. So this is the second constructor, which is also the named with the name of class. So but the difference between these two, the first one is the parameterized constructor and second one is the copy constructor. And always inside the copy constructor, in case of copy constructor, we pass the argument of constructor is a object of the class, same class which we have defined. So you can see here complex complex is a class, and the constructor name is also complex. So we are passing the argument, the object of the same class. So you can see here C is the object of complex class. So re equals to C dot re and im equals to C dot im. So it means the variable of C means the another complex object will be transferred to this the variable of this class, this object. So this is the second one. So now see the this public static void main. This is another class, public class main. So this is another class, public class main, and public static void main string args, and inside this we have defined here complex C1 equals to new complex 10, 15. So as we have mentioned here, new complex 10, 15. So this 10 and 15 will be transferred to the re and im. So double re. So 10 will be transferred to double re variable, and 15 will be transferred to double im variable. See here 10, 15. These two values will be transferred accordingly to the re and im, and accordingly to the variable of this class, this dot re and this dot im. So this dot re is now 10 and this dot im is now also 10. So these two value are transferred to the value of re and m. Now see the another C2, another object of same class, complex C2 equals to new complex. So here we have mentioned the object of the class, we are passing the argument previous object. So C1, this C1 complex C2 equals to new complex C1. So this C1 will be transferred to the C. See the another constructor complex C. So this C1 will be transferred to the C2, and now see this C where C1 is transferred to the C, and C dot re, again the same statement, C dot re equals to re and im equals to C dot im. So these are the two, and the third line complex C3 equals to C2. So as we have mentioned here, complex C2 equals to new complex C1. So same statement can be mentioned C2 complex C2 equals to C1 also, and the third statement complex C3 equals to C2. So we can write this statement complex C3 equals to new complex and inside the bracket C2. So these are the method of the copy constructor. So this is also interesting method. So finally we can say after this lecture, the learner will able to understand how to create the constructor, and the learning outcome of this lecture is to understand constructor, creating and calling constructor, different ways to initialize object, type of constructor in Java, inner class, copy constructor, and in next class we will discuss about the inheritance and multi-level inheritance and different other type of inheritance. So thank you learner, thank you very much.